All right, good afternoon. I don't know if anybody else is having any issues, but I was welcome, Clawhammer. I was having some issues earlier trying to load the Twitch site, so we'll see if that affects anybody else trying to get in and join the live stream with us here. But if you are watching live, if you happen to make it through and Twitch let the page actually load for you, jump in the chat, say hello, tell us where you're watching from. If this is your first time watching, if it's your first time watching, and if you haven't, or if it's not your first time watching, you haven't hit the follow button, hit the follow button. If you're watching live on Twitch, if you're watching this later on YouTube, hit the like button on the video, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed there. Yeah. And if you are watching this on YouTube later on, could jump over to the what is this, Twitch? Jump over to the Twitch channel and give us a follow over there. We need 3 more followers for goal number 1, which is only 10 followers, which doesn't sound like a lot. You would think now that I have like what do I have, 3,000 some followers on YouTube, that I'd be able to migrate more people over to Twitch, but I don't know necessarily how I got 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. So yeah, who knows? All right, Ming, good to see you. Grandpa Dave is here for your conversational requests. So good to see you. Thanks for jumping in. Again, jump into the chat, say hello. This is the Workday Recap here on the Dev Mentor Dave channel, and the goal of the Workday Recap is just to talk about something that popped up in my day, or something that popped up in your day while we were at work, or maybe things just around work, around our day, around our lives. Maybe it's something on LinkedIn that we saw, or some other social media. LinkedIn is the one that I typically talk about, because I don't usually do a whole lot with like Twitch and Facebook and I don't know what else, Instagram, whatever else you youngsters are working on. There's my grandpa reference for you, Ming. You youngsters, I'm not sure exactly what all you guys are on, but it's mostly LinkedIn for me. So feel free to, if I think I put the link to my LinkedIn on both channels, so feel free to befriend me there if you would like as well. So but every day, every Monday through Friday, we're here at 4 p.m. Central United States time, and we're just discussing random topics. So feel free to ask a question in the chat. You can do that with at DevMentorDave to get my attention, and I should be able to see it there in the chat. Or if you're watching this later, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, and I will see that and respond to it there, or I might respond to it on an upcoming Workday Recap here at 4 p.m. So Ming says, I use Telegram to communicate like during the war. Which one? That's awesome. So anyway, so that's what we're doing here. Usually we're here for about 30 minutes or so. We went a little bit longer yesterday. We had a lot of people, well, a lot of people for me, on the channel yesterday. I think we had 4 or 5 people in the chat conversating, if that's even a word. And so we had a good time. I apologize to the YouTubers. I put it up just a few minutes ago on YouTube, so if you're watching that later on, you're going to see that there's a lot of conversation at the beginning of yesterday that is a little bit atypical for our Workday recaps, but there you go. Hopefully it was at least somewhat amusing as we spent some time with several folks here in the chat. But honestly, that's my goal. I would much rather sit here and chat with people than just pontificate about whatever it is that I came up with for the day to talk about. So don't forget, we do have our live stream on Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Time. That's usually a 2-hour live stream, and you can find out more about that by looking at last week's, or going to YouTube, where you should be able to find that as well. Actually, I still haven't uploaded last Saturday, so I need to do that. So there you go. All right, Ming says he got the next round for a junior role. What should a typical junior be like at a large company? Yeah, proactive for sure. Definitely Clawhammer. The big thing that you need to find out is what they expect, because the problem with the market today is every company has their own expectations, and it can be different from one company to another because they may be used to a certain type of developer. So for example, my company is not looking for junior developers, but if we did start hiring junior developers, um, we would probably tend to be pretty strict on what we would want because we're used to working with senior level developers like Clawhammer, right? We're used to having people who we can give fairly vague tasks, and they can work on them, and they can progress quickly, and they can figure stuff out on their own. So we would tend to expect more than maybe some other companies will. So for example, some of I've taught classes on basic, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, WordPress development, things like that in the past. And I know that one of my students in particular got hired by a company, and it was in basically just doing WordPress websites. So it wasn't extremely technical. They actually told me later that they kind of regretted getting in that job because the job didn't require them to actually use the skills that they had learned outside of building websites in WordPress. And so they kind of lost some of their skills. They spent all that time working to build their skills up, and then they kind of lost it after a while. Hey, Mel, good to see you. Jump on in here. I think Twitch might be having some issues because I keep seeing some weird jumping around of the numbers and things. But if you're watching live, jump in the chat, say hello. Good to see you, Mel. Yeah, that's a good one, Clawhammer. Not afraid to ask, to have the humility of receiving a good way the advice and recommendations of your teammates. That really is key, honestly, for every developer. I mean, even me, in more of a director role, more of a lead role, I need to be willing to accept other people's ideas and even feedback. And so that, I mean, I feel like that's a skill that needs to be comprehensive your whole entire career, but especially as a junior developer, don't be afraid to ask questions. What I always tell junior developers is ask as many questions as you can, as you want to. Just try not to ask the same question twice. So you want to show that you're learning and you're not coming back for the same thing over and over and over again. So that would be the one piece of advice that I would say as far as questions are concerned. Don't ask the same question twice. But if you are asking new questions all the time, that tells people that you're actually learning, you're growing in your career. Um, so let's see. Ming says, they said they wanted me to ask loads of questions and show enthusiasm for learning. Plus, they said there's lots of support and mentorship. That is awesome. Man, Ming, if you could get into that job after all of the junk that you've gone through over the last year or so that I've known you, that would just be amazing. That would be really, really cool. If they really have that level of support and mentorship, that is the type of company that you want to get into, especially as a junior developer. You want to get into some place where they want to hear your questions, where they have people that are available and knowledgeable and ready to answer your questions, and that are not going to push you aside. Now, one thing I would caution you with is I would try to find, as much as you can, try to find a specific time of day that maybe the seniors or the mentors in your company are most available and least tied down by other things. That might be the morning, might be the afternoon. So it just depends on them. But I would try to find the time where they are consistently available so that you're not interrupting their time, that they're really heads down and working on something. Obviously, it sounds like a great company right now where they're open to support and mentorship and things like that. And that's good, but you also want them to be able to be productive in their time as well. So one of the things that I try to encourage people to do, both junior developers and mentors, is pick a time throughout the day where they're obviously available. So like plan a time in the morning or a time in the afternoon, maybe both. Maybe you've got a time at the beginning of the day, time at the end of the day, where you have that opportunity to come and say, hey, I've got issues. Now, obviously things are going to happen throughout the day. You may have to ask questions, but especially if it's like a learning thing, try to do that at one particular time of the day where they're before they've started their work, or maybe after they're probably done with the bulk of their work, just because that allows them to break free of what they're doing without having to worry about going back to it. right? Because that's one of the hardest things for developers is switching contexts. Even Clawhammer here, I've got him on a couple different projects, and he'll switch from one project to another. Now he likes it because he's a glutton for punishment, but most of the time it takes us a little while to get our mind in shape to go from one project to another, or to go from working on a project to answering a question. Even if it's about the same project, oftentimes it's just a different problem. And so we have a difficult time sometimes making that context switch. So if you can find a time that's generally a good time consistently every day to be able to have those more in-depth conversations with your lead, I would really encourage you to set that up with one or two of them. It sounds like you says you got you'll be working with 3 lead devs on projects. Nice. So it sounds like a pretty decent size organization. So that sounds pretty good. Mel says, do you find having multiple projects or working in different areas of the same project helps prevent burnt out or keeps you fresh? That's a good question for Clawhammer if you're still on. I think his answer is going to be yes, that it helps prevent burnout and keeps him fresh, just based on recent conversations. Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. So I do agree. I think it's nice to be able to mix up. Even if you have to do like 1 week on one project and another week on another project, it's good because it keeps you mentally fresh, right? It keeps you thinking about something new that you haven't been stuck on. Especially, let's say you do get stuck on one project. If you have another project that you can jump to that you're still getting paid to work on, right? That's always nice to be able to kind of let that problem simmer in the back of your mind, because that's something that we tend to do as developers too. In fact, I was talking to somebody else at work today, and he was mentioning that one of our leads was telling him that he was having a conversation at like 1 a.m. in the morning with his wife about the project and just thinking through certain things about the project. And that probably is not the best thing to do, especially if you want your wife or your significant other to be able to get some sleep. But we have this mental load, right? And that's something that we have to remember as developers. There's going to be a mental load, and that load doesn't necessarily go away just because we switch projects, but it often just kind of goes into the back of our mind. And so sometimes we can allow it to kind of work itself out without us necessarily stressing about it, without us really thinking about it. We can kind of just let it float in the back of our mind while we focus on something else, while we do a different project, while kind of the frontal part, I think of it as front and back, right? While the front part of my brain is more engaged. I don't know if that's even scientifically correct or not, but the front part of my brain is engaged in what I'm currently looking at and focusing on. But in the back of my mind, it's still thinking about that other problem that I've got going on in here. So I think it's a good way. Having multiple projects can be a really good thing if you have the skill set and the maturity to handle it, because that's another piece. You might have to develop into that. You might have to be just stuck on one project for a while until you get used to the working environment and until you get used to the way that they handle projects and things like that. So it all depends on your abilities, your knowledge. It depends on your maturity. So there's lots of different things that can go into that, as well as whether or not they give you 2 projects to work on, which a lot of times for a junior developer, they're not going to do that probably, unless you just really show at the beginning a lot of maturity and ability to handle something like that. So Mel says, if you have refactoring and have several projects that need it, switching between them can make it more bearable. Yeah, absolutely. It just lets you deal with different problems at different times, or kind of at the same time, while focusing on one over the other. And you kind of jump back and forth too. You get stuck over here, commit that code, come back over here, work on this. The big thing with that is just making sure that you're actually making progress on both of them and not just spinning your wheels. If you find that you are actually spinning your wheels in one or the other, go get help. Don't sit there as a junior developer and spin your wheels very long, because again, goes back to the question at the beginning. Ask questions. Be willing to go get help, especially if Ming's talking about being in a really good mentoring relationship. That that's the perfect environment to be in, and that's where, when you start to feel like you're spinning your wheels, ask help. Get help from somebody. Ming says, "Do you think being a junior is a liability to a company when layoffs happen?" So this is a hard question to answer because there's a lot of factors that go into layoffs. So, in one sense, being a junior is not necessarily a liability because you're probably the lowest paid person, and usually when layoffs happen, they're going to look for the people who are costing the most money, but also the least critical, right? So they're the first person that they're going to look for is somebody that they're probably overpaying and getting under, uh not getting what they want out of them, right? So because that makes the most sense, because you want to keep the people who are being the most productive, which, you know, sometimes they're the highest paid, sometimes they're not the highest paid. And then you want to keep people that are cheaper, because the whole point of letting people go most likely is financial, right? So if you're going through layoffs, that's generally a financial issue, and so finances make a big difference in that decision. I would say if you're a junior developer and you've proven yourself to be reliable, you're probably less likely to be cut. But there is the reality that you they need the people who are going to be the most efficient and the most effective for the clients that they still have. For example, taking a company that is dealing with multiple clients, they don't have their own project. They're going to want to keep the people who keep the lights on, right? Now I say that, but sometimes you end up having to let people go that you really want to keep, and that's when you know that there's a lot of issues financially and structurally in the company. So when you have to lose somebody that you really don't want to lose, um, that's a really hard position to be in, and that's why I say it really just depends on the situation. You might get let go being a really great junior developer, probably being more of a mid-level developer at a junior level cost, just because they've got to cut bodies and they're just trying to make the best decision that they can. I always tell people, don't don't assume that being laid off has anything to do with you. Um, More likely than not, being laid off has to do with the company and the choices that they have to make. Yeah, I mean, Clawhammer knows this, right? Like, it's definitely not something that it's not something that usually is your fault. I've been let go slash laid off from multiple companies. Um, the first time I was, and it's always hard because it's hard to know how the words that they use, right? So my first job, my first job working for my brother, technically I was freelance, but he let me go too. He told me there wasn't any more work for me to do, so I had to find a real job. So that was scary because I didn't know if anybody else would hire me, right? But I definitely got let go there. Got let go from my first job. I knew that was coming eventually because they let a lot of other people go first. So that wasn't a surprise, but it's still a gut punch, man. Even when it's not anything that you did, it hurts because you lose relationships, you lose income, right? You lose relationships, you lose the desire to kind of even do the job anymore sometimes. Like, there are real emotions that go into getting laid off, and as much as you prepare yourself, um you're still going to feel those emotions. I actually just saw a YouTuber recently. When she was starting off, I watched some of her stuff and was encouraging her on some of the videos and hers is, let me see if I can find it. I'll transition over here so you guys can see what I'm doing. YouTube, I think it's under my. Be nice if I could type. That would be awesome. Yeah, here we go. So, Anne Undefined. Check out her channel. She's got some good stuff.
Imagine.
But yeah, Anne Undefined. She just recently got laid off from her tech job, and again, go if you're on YouTube, go over there, check out her channel, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and because she's been on this 6 months or so, I think, maybe close to a year. I forget how long she's been on here, but anyway, she kind of talks through some of the emotions that are involved in this as well. And like, she had a feeling this was coming just through various issues and things at her job. You know, she kind of knew it was probably going to happen. She actually recorded it. She doesn't play the conversation and everything, but like that's how much she was pretty sure this was going to happen. So even when you know it's going to happen, it's still, there's this gut-wrenching feeling. It's hard to explain. It's like well, I think Clawhammer says it well, right? I felt like my world was collapsing, right? Yeah, it's just, and companies, they don't, I think this is probably a legal thing to protect themselves, but they don't usually tell you why they're letting you go. Unless they are like letting you go because of performance issues or something like that. Even then, they don't always tell you. But especially when there's layoffs, they don't typically tell people why. They may say that they're having to lay off multiple people, but that's about as far as they go, right? Because they don't want to give you any reason to sue them. If they give you a reason that you think is not fair or invalid, you know, and that's part of doing business, unfortunately. But that kind of makes it feel a lot more sterile, kind of like what Clawhammer's saying, right? It feels very sterile. It feels very poignant. It's just like, boom, done, gone. No matter how nice or kind the person is that's letting you go, there's nothing they can say to make that feel any better. It just hurts. It hurts a lot, especially if you've done a good job and you've been a great employee, and you care about your work and you care about the success of the company that you're working for, and you really want to contribute to it. Like, you are engaged, and then for whatever reason they have to let you go, like that just yeah, right. So that there's nothing that's going to make that feel better. Absolutely nothing. And so, you know, even if you think that you're prepared for it, you're not really prepared for it. It really is. Mel says, kind of sounds like cutting off a limb without sewing the wound. Yeah. I mean, it really is, because you're cutting off. It's not just the financial loss, right? You're talking about something that you were engaged in every single day, right? Whether you were going into the office and going to work, or you're logging on, you're interacting with specific people, and now literally in a moment, all of that is gone. It's just disappeared. And it was nothing that you did. There was nothing that you could do to stop it. It just literally happened. And there is this massive, in my mind, it's kind of like this like silence. It's this really loud silence where like everything just kind of comes to a stop, and you're like, I don't really know how to process this, really. And especially like the next day, the day after getting laid off, you're just kind of in shock and, you know, packing up your stuff or whatever it is that you're doing. But I think it's the day after that it really hits, when you're not logging into work. Now, sometimes they lay people off on Fridays for that reason, but come that next Monday, right? When you're not actually getting up for a job. You're getting up to work on your resume, or to look for openings, or to contact recruiters or things like that. For me, the best thing that has helped me every time I've gotten laid off is immediately start the process. I don't let myself really think about it. I think about my life and my work now as looking for a job. So my goal immediately shifts. I'll talk to my wife. I'll let her know what happened, and literally that afternoon, I will begin the process. I have I've done this so many times in my career. I actually have a process, right? Like we talked about yesterday about planning. I actually pretty much have a plan for when I get laid off. I don't actually have a plan for getting laid off from my current position. Because I've never been in this position before, so I need to figure out what that would look like. Hopefully that never happens, in case anybody from my current employer is watching. But besides Clawhammer, but like especially this is especially important if you don't have a support structure at home. If you don't have a support structure and friends or some other support structure, right? If you don't have somebody to come alongside you, to check in on you, to interact with you, it's really, really important that you at least have some sort of plan in place. And so the first thing that I do is going to go long. The first thing that I do is I update my resume. I update my resume. I do that even before LinkedIn, right? So I'll update my resume, and then I have never used I don't think I've ever used the open to work thing. I might have, but I don't remember ever using the open work thing on LinkedIn. That may be new enough that if it's in the last 4 or 5 years, then I probably, because I haven't been laid off from a company for 5 years or so. I've left a couple of companies, but I haven't been laid off. So I probably have. They probably didn't have it the last time that I was laid off. But first thing I will do is I will update my resume with everything that is relevant based on my last job that I just lost. Then the next thing I will do is I will get on LinkedIn, and I actually have a spreadsheet, and I would show it to you, but I don't want to show all the company names and things like that. But I have a spreadsheet. I think I've shown it in the past on a different live stream or on a video. So I actually have a series of videos about layoffs. So if you go to YouTube and check it out, let me see here. devmentordave.com goes to my YouTube channel. Layoffs. So I have a Let's Talk Layoffs where I talk through lots of different things. Also, just trying to help people have a more holistic understanding about layoffs, not just how that impacts you personally, but even how it impacts other people in the company that you were let go from, things like that. So feel free to check those out. I don't know if it's in here. I think it might be in this. We're just gonna watch my video here. Worst video topic. Turn off my sound. All right, we're just going to see. I just want to see if I put it up in any of my. I would think I'd put it up here, but maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, so I have a spreadsheet that I use whenever I am looking for a job, basically whenever I get laid off. And what that spreadsheet does is that gives me companies that I'm applying to, recruiters that I'm using to apply to those companies, contact information, the different jobs or different interviews that I've had during that process. And I treat it as if it's a job. I start tracking all the different things like that. That is what I am doing for work. I will also reach out and see if anybody has any work that I can do freelance wise. I don't usually end up with freelance jobs, but yeah, Clawhammer says we're here to help. Dave more than me. So I don't. That is my thing. So I have a plan, right? Update the resume. Then I contact people on LinkedIn based on my spreadsheet. A lot of times those recruiters have moved on to other jobs, by the way. But on LinkedIn, I try to have as many connections as possible in general, but especially with recruiters, because for me, I've almost always gotten a job through a recruiter. The job I currently have is the only one that I did not get through a recruiter outside of my very first job working for my brother. So, recruiters for me, excuse me, recruiters for me are my world of getting a job. That doesn't mean that that is the only way to do it or the best way to do it. It's just the way that I typically get a job. So I will then begin contacting my network and things like that. So to me, the key to dealing with it is not ignoring it, but the key to dealing with it is having a plan. If you have a plan, then you can move into that plan. And maybe part of that plan is not doing anything for a day or two. And that's perfectly fine. In fact, I think if I remember correctly, when a part of Anne's plan was Anne's plan, there you go. Part of Anne's plan was just letting it sit for a minute, right? Letting it sit, let it think about, what's happened, see if there's anything that you feel like you need to think through or process in that process. Another thing that I do is I have a secret Slack channel for my former coworkers, and so different coworkers that I've interacted with that I've had built some relationships with. Whenever I lose a job, I tend to reach out to them and invite them in to my my Slack channel, my private Slack channel. So yeah, it's kind of funny. I've actually worked with one of the guys in that Slack channel twice. Actually, two of them in that Slack channel twice. So it was a little bit weird having them come in and then working with them again. It was a little odd, but hey, that's great. I love being able to work with people I've worked with in the past. So I have a process, and that's what I would do. I would understand that it's going to hurt. There's going to be feelings that you're going to have that maybe you've never felt before, and there's going to be a gamut of them. Okay, you need to be ready for that. There's going to be anger. There's going to be sadness. There's going to be self-pity. There's going to be even not self-deprecation, but looking down on yourself, self-judgment, right? You're going to go through all of these different emotions probably multiple times during that process. You're going to be angry at the company for letting you go. You're going to maybe, look at yourself and say, man, you just weren't good enough. What's wrong with you? You're a bad dev, right? You're going to be sad because of the connections that you had, the people that you used to work with, and now you don't interact with them anymore. You're going to go through a whole range of emotions, and you've got to be ready for that. And that would be my best advice. Have a plan and be ready to go through a whole range of emotions. But thirdly is work the plan. Like, get moving. And it doesn't have to be same day. That's just me. I like to get moving same day because I don't want to spend a bunch of time dwelling on it. I don't want to spend a bunch of time in that emotional phase. So for me, it's getting active right away. But you gotta move forward. I have a feeling this is gonna get closer to an hour because you all keep asking questions. Doggone it. Let me get caught up here. There's been some conversations. Let's see. Would a junior dev be less likely to get laid off compared to someone who is comfortable in their area and not learning new tech? No, not necessarily, Mel. I would say it just totally depends. It totally depends on the needs of the company, why they're laying off. And that's why I say, again, it's not just recognized from the very beginning. It is not your fault. If they're letting you go because of something you did, they should be making that somewhat clear. If they're letting you go because they're laying people off, that is not your fault. Okay. And so that's why it's hard to say why someone would let you off, because they don't typically tell you. Even we've had layoffs before, and that's thankfully, I wasn't laid off, but I lost a lot of good friends, right? And coworkers in that process. So it's the people who stay are not necessarily better off either, too. So you have to keep that in mind, too. Let's see. Ming says, I'm not sure if you know Coding Phase on YouTube, but he said if you're a senior dev doing junior level tasks could cut costs, they would be the first to go. Again, yeah, that's another possibility. Again, that goes back to if you're not giving them what they think they want out of your level, and they're paying you at a higher rate, that's a pretty good assumption that you might be on the chopping block there. So yeah, in Clawhammer, business decision, nothing personal. Absolutely. Absolutely. Most of the time, that is absolutely the case. Mel says, I don't like sudden change. That's true. Well, I don't think anybody does, especially this. Yeah, it really, so Mel's asking about the process. It really depends on the company. Again, most of the companies I've been at, it's pretty much been, your position's no longer available or here or a reality, right? And today's going to be your last day, pack up your stuff, you know, thanks for your service, whatever. And then they either walk you out or, I mean, they have their own process for how it works. I did have one company that I had to sign a non-disparagement agreement with. They were letting the whole dev team go, which again, that's fine. I'm not going to go on social media and talk bad about a former employer. I just think that's unprofessional anyway. So every company is going to have different processes. It just depends on what their process is and what they think is best in that process. So, yeah, it depends. The payment question, it just depends on the company. It depends on, a lot of things. If, years ago you used to have vacation time and sick pay that they would often pay out, as well as like our company pays it's always a week in arrears, right? So you're going to get whatever amount of the time you've put in, you should be getting paid for. So usually you'll get a check for whatever you've worked for that company. The only reason why you shouldn't get a check is if the company's literally insolvent. And that's why they're laying people off. But usually if you're getting laid off, you'll get at least pay for the time that you've worked. And then sometimes they'll give you some sort of severance. I've had jobs pay me just for what I've worked. I've had jobs give me a 2-week severance. I think one of them gave me. I actually had one job accidentally pay me my next salary payment because something messed up in their system. And I called them because I wanted to make sure, if you ever get money you don't expect, try to make it right. Don't just assume that they're going to let you keep the money. Okay. Be above board and try to make it right. So I called him. I was like, hey, just letting you know, I got paid and I left. This is a company I actually left. So I got paid, but I left, a couple weeks ago. I don't think I should have gotten this. And I talked to the HR person. They actually told me, they're like, well, there's, you didn't get vacation paid out or anything like that. So just consider it that, because it was more of a pain for her to go in and fix it than it would have been to just let me keep the money. So that actually worked out pretty well that one time. But usually it's just whatever they owe you from time worked, typically, unless they have, again, every job is different. They could have a specific severance package. Part of it depends on why they're letting you go too, right? So they may give you a severance package because they're letting you go for reasons that they deem deserve some sort of package, right? Ming says, I've been let go from my last 2 roles, but they were really bad companies, so it hit hard first, but after that I just learned to accept it. It'll happen. Mel says, I've heard it gets easier to get a job when you're already working at another company, so getting a new job before anyone realizes you've been let go is probably a good move. Yeah, generally, I think the reason for that, we're really going late today. The reason for that is you, as an interviewee, are much more relaxed. You're much less stressed if you already have a job, especially if you're not, if you don't know that layoffs are coming. Now you might have, You might have a little bit more stress if you do know that layoffs are coming. But typically, if you're interviewing for a job and you already have a job, you tend to be less stressed. They tend to get you in more of a real you environment. So that's another reason why I think people tend to get a job when they already had one. So there's that. Aw, Clawhammer, you love your current job and team. I take that personally. Mel says, "How do you prepare your families for such a thing since your emotions are going to be all over the place?" Yeah, Clawhammer says you don't. um, Honestly, it will probably happen many times in your career, unfortunately. Um, it's just it's kind of weird. I've mentioned this before. I've got a buddy who works for a company and has for 20 years as a developer, right? I mean, that is a company that is known for longevity though. So it would be more, but they've even gone through layoffs. There have been times that he thought he was going to get laid off too and just ended up not getting laid off. So I would just say getting into this, that you need to prepare your family it's a very common thing, especially if you go to really big companies like the FANG companies, or if you go to small companies. If you're in the mid-range companies, there's probably less of a chance of you getting laid off because they're kind of mid-range. But smaller companies tend to be more impacted by the loss of a big client, right? One of the companies that I've worked for in the past, they had hundreds of people, but most of them were on contract, and so it was much easier for them to cut contractors. When I was let go, I think I was let go with like 50 other contractors. So while they were a pretty big company here in the Kansas City area, they kept things very small as far as like actual employees, so that they could. So it wasn't as big of a deal to cut a contract, right? That was their prerogative. That's how they had things set up. So I think part of it is just understanding that depending on your location, depending on the size of company that you're working with, the the chances that you're going to get laid off some point in your career is pretty high. And so you've just got to. That's why I've talked about this before in the past, that we need to do a better job as developers, making sure that we understand how to budget, how to handle our finances so that we can be prepared. We can have a nest egg for when we're probably going to get laid off. Now, different people have different experiences too. I have never been laid off for more than a month, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm not saying that because I'm some sort of guru or something like that. I've been fortunate enough to not have to deal with being laid off more than a month. Um, that's not the case with everybody. I know other people have been laid off for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, some even longer than that, right? And I have other thoughts on that, which I'm not going to go into right now. But because we're already 15 minutes over time, so this is going to be a long upload for YouTube. But I think it's really important that you understand and that you prepare your family for the reality that it's probably going to happen at some point in your career if you're going to stick with this career. Um, it's just a reality. In my family, I mean, we've just gotten to the point where they know what my routine is when it happens. They know what the plan is when it happens. And, we try to be prepared financially. We're not always in the perfect situation to do that, but we have a good support group from our church, from family and friends as well. So we're in a good position to weather the storm, right? And I think that is the key. Setting yourself up in position. You're gonna feel the feelings. Um, so just let that just do what happens, right? Feel the feelings, work through that. Try to do that alone unless you need the emotional support from family or friends or something like that. Um, but have a good support system around you, and just don't, as Clawheimer's saying, don't lose hope, right? Don't lose hope. we've been talking for a while around lots of different ideas of getting jobs, finding other ways to use your skills at other jobs, things like that. So don't lose hope. I truly believe there are many more potential jobs out there than people looking for them. I think we just got to figure out the right way to make those connections, and a lot of that just comes down to persistence. And if your family sees you putting in that work, they're going to be more encouraged. They're going to be more excited. If they see you just sitting on the couch watching Netflix, um, that's not going to help the situation, right? You need to view getting a job as your job, and you need to push for it and pursue it. And you're constantly getting interviews. You're constantly talking to recruiters. You're constantly putting in resumes. You're constantly doing all these different things, right? So you need to have a plan. Goes back to yesterday, right? You need to have a plan for when this happens, because the likelihood that it's going to happen is pretty high. And the likelihood that's going to happen more than once is pretty high. Even as Clawhammer says, it's happened to him twice, right? It's happened to me at least 3 times, if not 4 times in my career. I'm trying to remember, 1, 2, 3, 4 if you count freelancing for my brother, right? So, I mean, it's just it is, unfortunately, a lot of it is just part of the job. Unless you are fortunate enough to find a company that you can grow with, and you're there for 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, hey, that's awesome that the company's lasted that long, which does not often happen, especially if you're working with startups and things like that, right? So yeah, that's a good thing. Ming says I have my church crew if anything happens to my career as well. So yeah, I mean, you got to build a support system around you, especially if you don't have immediate family. You need to have support of friends, or even networks. So even just a network, other developers in your area that get together, once in a while, even if it's just former coworkers that are close by that you can get with and just get some encouragement from them. Get network building so that you have people to contact when that time comes. So again, a lot of it really is about preparation, allowing yourself to go through the emotions, but having a plan so that you know what you're going to do when the time comes that you're going to start moving forward. Excuse me. But don't let yourself just, if it's all right if you want to give yourself a day or two to let everything settle, but not more than that. Get your rear in gear and start moving forward, because you've got to show to other employers that you didn't get let go because you couldn't handle the work, right? You're not going to have a reason why you got let go, but you need to show other employers that you're pursuing this, finding a job just like you were doing a job. Like, you're not wasting time, right? You've got to show them that you are proactive, because that's what they're looking for. And if you can show them that you're proactive in this one of the hardest points in your career, that can be a huge bonus in helping you potentially land your next job. So hopefully all that helps. I mean, we got off on an interesting tangent. I had something else I was gonna talk about, but I will do that tomorrow unless you guys have other plans and take me off course, like you tend to do. So, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, again, this is why I am on here, right? I'm on here because I want to interact with you guys. I want to answer your questions. I want to help you not just learn to write code. I want to help you advance in your career, whether that's initially getting a job, whether that's understanding the reality of layoffs, whether that's knowing how to interact with senior devs and knowing how to not make them mad, everything in that process, I want to help you guys with. So thanks for jumping in here. We got Clawhammer, Mel, Ming. Looks like Dan didn't make it today. Poor Dan. Maybe he'll watch it later on YouTube. So Dan, if you're watching this later on YouTube, leave a comment. That'll help the algorithm out too. So there you go. Anyway, I'm going to cut off, guys. We're now 20 minutes over the normal 30 minutes for our workday recap, but I think it was good. It was a good conversation. It was good to talk through. And so hopefully it was helpful to you guys. I will see you again tomorrow. at 4 o'clock Central United States time. One programming note, Thursday I may not be on, or I may be late. I have a chiropractor's appointment at 3. I don't know how long that's going to take. Hopefully it won't take real long and I'll be able to get back in time, but just FYI, I may not make it back, but if I get back close to 4, I'll still jump on. So I'll see you all on Thursday then as well. But tomorrow I should be here, should be back in the saddle at 4 p.m. So be here and be ready with your questions so you can keep me from doing any of the topics that I want to do moving forward. So anyway, have a great day, guys. Thanks for jumping on. I will see you tomorrow.